In recent years, Ireland v All Blacks has been a big occasion. Friday is going to be no different. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Ireland v New Zealand. This is on Friday night. Its kickoff time is 8:10. It's at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin, or Lansdowne Road. If we want to give the non-sponsored name of the stadium. So, as I said, always a massive occasion, this one, especially in recent years. For me, it's always been the game that you look, at in the calendar in terms of like Ireland versus New Zealand, Ireland versus England, and Ireland versus South Africa. Really, for me, have been the three big ones down through the years, for all the years that I've watched rugby. And, I remember for years, hoping that Ireland could maybe one day get a first win over the All Blacks. We got a lot of absolute pastings from them. We came close on a couple of occasions, but never seemed to quite get there. And then 2016 rolled around in Soldier Field, and we did get that first win. That was so special. And, for me, it really was a special year. Honestly, because first of all, I got married in that year, so obviously that was a happy occasion. And also, I've talked about it on the channel before, rugby with my dad was a massive part of our relationship together before he passed away. And we'd watched games, either gone to games together or just watched games together on the TV, or even when we were halfway around the world from each other, we'd chat about it on the phone or wherever. And, around that stage, my dad had dementia. Luckily, he hadn't gotten to the stage where, he became completely incoherent. He still, he wouldn't get names right or anything like that, but he still could, follow the games and stuff like that. We could have a chat about it. And, he could remember at least those little details of things. And to be able to share that kind of first win over New Zealand with him as well was, something special for me. And, it's just kind of the respect I have for New Zealand rugby as well. That it was such a great milestone for Ireland to finally get that win against them. And as I said, it's just a very special memory for me, tied up into that and tied up with rugby as well. And then since then, it's been kind of a ding-dong battle between the two nations. And, New Zealand, obviously in the Rugby World Cup, getting the better of Ireland in 2019 and then in 2023 as well. So, even though people will talk about how, New Zealand are maybe a bit of a, faded team compared to the past, etc. There aren't, you go a long way to find a poor All Blacks team, right? The fact that they're still in, the top 3 or 4 in the world, and people are talking about them as if they're number 10 or number 11 is the way people seem to be talking about it. And I forget, it's so close as well between, you got Ireland, South Africa, France, New Zealand, all within a hair's breadth of each other up there at the top of the standings. So it just takes, a couple of wins against one or two of those other rivals, and suddenly you've gone from 4 to 1. So it's just so close up there. And if New Zealand are a bad team and they're so close to the number 1 and 2 teams of the world, then that tells you the measure of how good rugby is in New Zealand historically, and even at this time as well, that they can't be that bad if they're so close to the top there. Yes, they struggled in the rugby championship, but still, we saw against England, they found a way to win there, and they always seem to be able to raise their game, especially against Ireland as well. So I think this really is going to be a special game. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk, first of all, go quickly down through each of the teams. Then we'll go back and talk through the teams a bit more in depth. For me, obviously more in depth for Ireland compared to New Zealand because I'm an Ireland fan. And, I will have a bias towards Ireland. those who watch me, I recognize my bias, but I try to kind of tamper it down as much as possible and try to be as fair-handed as I can when I'm talking about stuff, and be as respectful as I can as well. But if you have more knowledge on one side of things than the other, you're obviously going to talk a little bit more, or even a lot more, about that side than the other side. And then at the end, then I'll talk about how I think the game might go. Okay, so let's first of all have a look at the Ireland team. We'll just go straight down through it, and then we'll do the New Zealand team, and then we'll come back to the Ireland team to talk a bit more. So fullback Hugo Keenan, right wing Mac Hansen, the centres end Gary Ringrose, Bundy at key, left wing James Lowe, halfbacks Jack Crowley, Jameson Gibson Park. The back row then Caelan Doris, Josh Van der Fleer and Tyke Byrne. Second row James Ryan and Joe McCarthy. The front row then Philly Beelum, Ronan Kelleher and Andrew Porter. Then on the bench we have Rob Herring, Keane Healy, Tom O'Toole, Ian Henderson, Peter O'Mahony, Conor Murray, Keane Frawley and Jamie Osborne. Okay, so that is the Ireland team. Now let's have a quick look at the New Zealand team. So New Zealand team starting from 1 this time to 15 rather than 15 to 1. So front row is Tamatai Williams, then Asafo Aumua and Tara Lomax. The second row then Scott Barrett and Tupou Vai. Back row is Wallace Sititi, Sam Kane and Artie Savea. Halfbacks Cortez, Bratima and Damien McKenzie. Left wing Caleb Clark. Centres Jordy Barrett and Rico Ioane. Right wing Mark Talea. And fullback is Will Jordan. On the bench then we got George Bell, Ofa Tuwingafasi, Pasalio Tosi, Patrick Tupalotu, Sammy Penny Finau, Cam Roygard, Anton Leonard-Brown and Stephen Parafeta. Okay, so let's talk about the Irish team in a bit more depth. So fullback Hugo Keenan, going to be a key member of the Irish team, I think, because New Zealand, yes, they can run the ball, they've got all the skills, but they've also got a smart kicking game. And the back three, especially Hugo Keenan, we've got to be on it. Got to make sure they're claiming those high balls, and also that, in terms of our kicking strategy, that we're picking the right time to kick, the right place to kick, whether it's putting it down the middle, going to the edges, kicking to contest, kicking for distance, kicking to make sure that it goes, right into the crowd, so there's no, quick takes on throws and stuff like that. Got to be on it for every single one of those. Then also, coming into the line, offering himself there as well. He does that so well. He talked about how his transition back to 15s compared to going to 7s for the Rugby World Cup was a lot smoother than going the opposite way. Or sorry, not the Rugby World, for the Olympics he went back to 7s, right? But he said coming back to the 15s was a smoother transition than going the opposite way. But he said that he felt that his game at 15s could improve from what he was doing in 7s as well. So for me, we've yet to see that. I think he's a little bit, just a tiny bit off it maybe back in 15s. He has been decent for Leinster, but we still haven't seen that spark that he normally brings. So let's see if we can step up to the big occasion on this one. Then right wing, you've got Mac Hansen, so preferred over Calvin Nash. So I think that was a big call there. Mac Hansen had been out for a while. Calvin Nash, he didn't do anything wrong while he deputised down in South Africa. Thought he was really good. And I said Mac Hansen, he's only back not too long. He has been playing well for Connacht when he has come back there, but I feel like he's maybe got more competition than he did before, and everyone obviously for Ireland has to have a big game if they're going to win this. We're not going to play badly and beat New Zealand, but for him I feel like there's that pressure as well of, if he doesn't perform, there is somebody waiting in the wings that's shown that they can perform in that position. So a little bit more pressure maybe on him to produce something. Then into the centres then, Gary Ringrose and Bundy Aki are the preferred guys in there. So Gary Ringrose, maybe a little bit of a slow start with Leinster, but definitely came on in the last few games for them that I saw him play. So I think he's getting back up there again. And when he's at his best, that could be, I think that's going to be a big battle between himself and Ioane in that centre position. Who's going to come out on top in terms of, leading the defensive effort for the team, but also trying to break down the defense of the opposition as well. Those two, I think, are going to be key in this game. Next to him, then you got Bundy Aki. So Bundy Aki, you know what he gives you. He's probably been Ireland's best player over the last 2 seasons at least, in terms of just being consistently right up there at the top. Player of the match in so many games, and now I feel like he's starting as well to kind of evolve his game a little bit, where he's looking more for where's his support, rather than before. Bundy Aki, you knew he was going to carry hard, he was going to break the line, but it was almost certainly going to be a recycle rather than an offload, or even passing before contact as well. We're seeing more of that come into his game, and that just gives you more options. As long as we can get the support there to him, then we have options to be able to get in behind there and not let teams, and especially New Zealand, reset the defence because we have a ruck. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's able to bring that to his Ireland game as well. Then on left wing, you got James Lowe there. So, really good finisher. We know he's got that big boot, and he does have now and again the odd one where he'll kind of screw off his foot. We don't want to see one of those early on, but if he can consistently keep the All Blacks pegged back with his big kicks, then that's going to be good for Ireland. It means that we play more of the game in the right areas of the field, but someone who you can rely on. He's anything that he came into criticism for. Remember, like when he started with Ireland first, everybody kind of slated him for his defence, and then he come up with some really big defensive plays for Ireland. So we need that again. The wing defence with Hansen and with Lowe, it's got to be spot on, because they're against in Caleb Clark, but especially in Talea, two world class finishers that they've really got to marshal. And then also beyond that, obviously you've got the potential of offloads as well. So it's no good just taking care of your man. You've got to have the support there, or the ability to wrap the ball up, or to as I said, have the support there to either stop the offloads, intercept the offloads, or take care of whoever gets the offload. So that's going to be a big side of things as well for both Lowe and Hansen. Then halfbacks, Jack Crowley at 10. Probably before we went to South Africa, everybody would have just assumed that Jack Crowley was definitely going to be the starting 10 for all of these November games, or at least for the big November games, right? And that between him and everyone below him, it felt like there was daylight there, especially when you were looking at the likes of Ross Byrne, Harry Byrne, etc. In the squad. But now, after the exploits of Kieran Frawley down in South Africa, suddenly that gap has closed a lot. But I still believe that Crowley is our starting 10, and it's right that he's the starting 10 for this as well. Hasn't been in great form for Munster, honestly. Kicking game especially has been a little bit off, but then there's a bit of a malaise as well around Munster, and we see that with the departure of their head coach there as well, Graham Rowntree. So things maybe not all quite rosy at Munster, but maybe come into your Ireland environment is maybe what he needs, to kind of reset himself and get that confidence back as well. the man beside him will help a hell of a lot with that. James Gibson-Park, he's so vital to the way Ireland attack. It's not just the fact that he can get quick ball, it's the fact that he's getting you a quick ball and he's almost always making the right decision with it as well. He's already, he's not just whipping the ball out for the sake of moving away from the point of contact. He's already decided of his options that are available, which is the best option, whether that's, to give it to his 10, give it to a 4 to carry up, to go for a wider pass, to maybe snipe himself, to put in the kick, wherever. His speed of thought and his game management as well is really going to help, I think, Jack Crowley there. And he's got to be on it as well because, we've seen New Zealand previously. When they play Ireland, they like to attack us at the breakdown because they know that we generally try to not resource we basically try to put the minimum amount of players into rucks, especially early on in the game, right? And we want them as those carriers, and that, in the system that we have for attacking, where everybody is a threat, a potential ball carrier, you need the numbers in the line to be able to do that and to keep the opposition guessing. And that means that we tend not to put too many people into the ruck, but we have seen before, on multiple occasions, New Zealand will go after us at the ruck. I expect them to do it again here. Ireland need to adapt to that. Gibson-Park, though, his ability to move that ball quickly and to make those decisions under pressure is going to be absolutely key. But also what has to happen from him as well is, if we're under severe pressure at that ruck, he needs to be one of the ones that's making the decision. Listen, we need extra people into ruck to secure the ball, and if it means we have 1 or 2 less options when we're running the ball, that's what we've got to play with. There's no point in having extra options when we're not going to actually get the ball back. So it's going to be another big thing for him, I think, is again to be a trigger, if you like, to say, we need to change our tact, and we need to resource that ruck. Then into the pack, so Caelan Doris at 8, he's been fantastic for Leinster so far this season. His carrying has always been good, but it feels like it's gone to another level, and we will need that as well, because we need to make those yards against New Zealand, stretch that line, bend it, get in behind, and then after that, then all of those options that we have on our runs are going to be so much more impactful, rather than kind of carrying up and getting stopped dead, and then suddenly it doesn't matter wherever, if you have a million options, if everyone's just getting beaten back at the gain line. So his carrying is going to be key. His captaincy as well, I think he's done really well since he's taken over the Leinster captaincy. Last season, I really didn't like the fact that you had James Ryan and Gary Ringrose as co-captains. It really didn't work for the team, and the fact that they decided to go to Doris instead, I think was a really smart decision from them. Good decision from Ireland as well. Obviously, Peter Manny, if he'd been fit, completely fit at least, may have been the captain, but I think it was a good decision to say, listen, let's just give it to Caelan for now, and we'll see what happens after that. So I think he's going to do the jersey proud and do the armband proud as well, and those who've gone before him. 7 then, Josh van der Fleer, former World Player of the Year. He's never since then quite reached that height, but he's still a fantastic player, and he's another guy who has improved his carries. He's a real threat at the breakdown, and he does a lot of kind of unseen work as well. So very happy to have him in there, and good link player as well. Then at 6 we have Tadhg Beirne, threat at the breakdown. The last time Ireland played New Zealand in the World Cup, New Zealand were very smart, and it was a Joe Schmidt tactic really, to put somebody on Beirne, and their job was to just stop him getting over the ball and winning penalties for Ireland or turnovers for Ireland, and they did it absolutely amazingly. So Ireland needs some kind of tactics to be able to adapt to that, so that his undoubted ability over the ball can actually work in our favour, because New Zealand just absolutely, completely nullified him in that one. Then the other thing that he's important for is our maul defence. He's so important, getting in there, disrupting. He walks on like a tightrope on an edge there, between legality and illegality as well. So, if our maul is struggling, we might actually see him going to the bin, because he's the one that's going to be in there, as I said, trying to disrupt and bring mauls down. But he's going to be so important for us, I feel, at 6. Then onto the locks, we've got James Ryan, who, a few years ago would have been an absolute nail-on starter for Ireland. He's under pressure for his position, at Leinster and in Ireland as well. I feel there's lots of competition there, but he's a really great line-out option, and he's another one of these guys who will just get through a mountain of work in terms of putting in tackles and just clearing out rucks as well. He's so good at that. I think the fact that that pressure of captaincy has been removed from him really has allowed him to focus on his own game as well. Beside him, then Joe McCarthy, a real revelation for Ireland since he's come into the team, and he gives us that extra bulk that we've been missing for a long time as well in that second row. We've always had athletic, rangy kind of second rows, but he's got genuine bulk to him. He's a great ball carrier and another guy who gets through the work as well. Very good as well in terms of maul attack, to just getting in good positions and helping us to drive forward through mauls. Then onto the front row, 2 big players missing for us. We've got no Tyke Furlong. The guy is irreplaceable, honestly, for Ireland. He's our best scrummager. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. And he's so good and loose as well, getting over the ball, tying up defenders. Sometimes he plays like a 10, the way he is, or a centre. So we're going to miss that part of his game as well, but also just gets through a mountain of work through the game too. Finlay Bealham, a decent replacement. I felt like the Six Nations before the World Cup, he was probably in better form than Furlong. Furlong had a dip in form around that time, and Bealham was probably our best form tight head, but still, Furlong still has the higher ceiling. So a lot of weight on Bealham's shoulders now to kind of do that now, because Furlong was getting back to his best, so he's going to be a big miss, and Bealham needs to step up really. This is his chance to come in and to show what he can do in a really big game for Ireland. He's served Ireland so well as backup, and now as a starting tight head, a big opportunity for him. Then at hooker as well, Dan Sheehan. So Dan Sheehan, another one of those who's it's so hard for Ireland to replace him because we don't have a player of his ability. He's just so good, and there's so few players of that ability in the world either. And but for him, we knew he was gone anyway. Whereas Furlong was kind of, this week we found out that he wasn't going to be in. He was the big shock for us. But Sheehan, we knew wasn't going to be in. Ronan Keller, we thought he wasn't going to be in either. And we were looking at who's our 4th, 5th, 6th choice hookers, because we had so many of our front line hookers out. So the fact that he's back is great. In terms of like for replacements, he's the closest we have to Sheehan, but still not at Sheehan's level. Sheehan just give you so much more in the loose. The guy can play as a centre. You can put him out on the wing, and that ability as well to finish. Whether he's out there on his own, or whether he's at the back of them all. I think something that Sheehan does is he makes an okay maul into a brilliant maul because he has that ability to finish. And I think a lot of his maul tries have a lot more to do with what his abilities are, rather than how good, especially Leinster, how good the team's maul was when he actually got over. Whereas a lot of hookers that score tries are sitting in the back of a really dominant maul and then getting over to score. But I felt like Sheehan was kind of the opposite. He was at the back of maybe a poor to middling maul, but still was getting over for tries. Ronan Keller will do his best to fill in there. He's got to scrummage well. He's got to hit his man in the line-out as well. Line-out isn't brilliant from him, in terms of comparing him to, say, Herring on the bench. But another guy who's going to have a big game. Then Andrew Porter at loose head, a very destructive scrummager, but we know he gets on the wrong sides of referees. We know that he has a tendency to drive across the scrum, and he gets pinged for that. And he finds it so hard to adjust to within games to the instructions that referees give him, that he can become a liability as well. So if teams can get onto that, get him conceding a couple of penalties early on, that affects the rest of his game as well. But when he's playing well, when he's winning those scrum penalties, he's also in the loose end, getting over the ball, winning penalties for opposition holding on, etc., and getting through a rate of work as well. So that's going to be an interesting one to look at there. Onto the bench then, you got Rob Herring. Of kind of our three starting hookers, probably the more traditional hooker, I would say, in terms of, he does the basics probably better than the two that are generally ahead of him. He's a good scrummager. He's generally better in the line-out, although he does have moments where he kind of gets the yips as well, and sometimes at key times, unfortunately. But an able replacement certainly off the bench. Cian Healy then, I'm blue in the face talking about this. I love the guy, but the fact that he's in our squad tells you about, the lack of young talent coming through at loose head at the moment in Ireland. We need more loose heads coming through, and we need, we basically the fact that Cian Healy is our number 2 loose head available at the moment. Again, it just speaks to the fact that there's no young players coming up to try and knock him off there. So I'm happy that he's there. We obviously know he can cover the entire front row as well, and that's brilliant for him to be in there. Then Tom O'Toole, very happy for him. Hopefully he's going to get on for a decent amount of time, maybe the last 20 minutes or so. It's going to be a big test though when those three come on, because we saw when the All Blacks replaced the front row against England, they went from being dominated to being dominant. So those guys really will have to deliver off the bench, I think, for Ireland, especially if it's tight towards the end. But Tom O'Toole, one thing you can almost guarantee with him is he's going to carry ball. He's going to carry it well for you. He's so good at that. That's his kind of point of difference, I feel, compared to other tight heads that are available to Ireland. So I think he's going to do really well if he gets a decent amount of game time off the bench. Then we've got Ian Henderson there, covering the second row. For me, I would have preferred to see maybe one of the younger locks that are coming through instead, or maybe even Ryan Baird there as well. But, Ian Henderson, he's going to give you graft. He gives you bulk. He's another one kind of like Tadhg Byrne that will give you that maul defense and maul attack as well. Just that kind of basics grunts. But we've seen recently, in recent years, for such a big man and such a strong man, very fragile at times as well. So hopefully if he comes on, he stays on until the end. Then Peter O'Mahony, been struggling with injury. He's probably going to be able to give us 15-20 minutes off the bench and absolutely empty the tank. And we've seen in the past how many crucial moments he has in games as well, in big games. He's the man for the big occasion, and to be able to bring that experience off the bench, I think, is brilliant. No more experience coming off the bench as well in Conor Murray, guy who talked about before. He's reinvented his game. He went from looking like a guy who was his international career was going to peter out a few years ago, completely changed the way he plays in terms of the speed of his passing, etc. And has just brought himself back into contention again. Could have been a debate between himself and Casey on the bench, but I'm happy enough to see Conor Murray there. Then Kieran Frawley, he's been doing really well. He's getting time at Leinster as well at 10. That's good to see a shift there, because you've got the two Byrne brothers still there at Leinster, but it seems like, I don't know whether it's come from Leinster or it's coming down from Ireland, but he's definitely getting more game time at 10 there, and that's going to be to his benefit, to Ireland's benefit as well. His showed how cool he can be under pressure down in South Africa as well. So it good option coming off the bench, and it feels like we're stronger at 10 because of that than we were maybe in the World Cup. In terms of like after Johnny Sexton, because it was Johnny Sexton, Jack Crowley, and then just a gulf. And then Sexton retired, and then it was Crowley, and then a fairly wide margin. But things are kind of closing up there a little bit. Then Jamie Osborne, another guy who covered himself in glory down in South Africa, has shown how versatile he can be. He's another big boot, kind of like Lowe as well. So him coming on, perhaps a fullback at some stage, or going on to one of the wings, or even coming into the centres, is going to give us another option there as well. So fairly happy with the team. Obviously some big names missing, but it's a strong Ireland team going into that game. But that doesn't mean doesn't guarantee any wins. Games aren't played on paper. So let's have a close look at the New Zealand team. So Tamatai Williams there at loose head, really struggled in the scrum, obviously against England, and I think De Groot is a big miss for this All Blacks front row. I think De Groot and Lomax, when they came through together, they felt like a really good pairing at loose head and tight head for them. And I think after De Groot, it's one of these ones again, kind of similar to Ireland, where there's a bit of a gap to the next person. But in the loose, pretty good, and he's an All Black. He's got the skills as well. Then we got no Cody Taylor at hooker, going to be a big miss for the All Blacks as well. Aumua, did some decent things against England. Another one who's going to be an able replacement there, but if you were an All Black fan, you'd probably rather see him coming off the bench and Taylor being available and starting. You could probably feel a little bit better about things. But these are the kind of games where a player like this can just step up and say, listen, I'm actually of that level. I'm going to announce myself to the world in this game and just show you all what I can do. Then Tyrell Lomax, when he came through again with the group, looked absolutely to the manner born for New Zealand. Felt like felt like he elevated their scrum. They went from having kind of, they never really have a bad scrum. New Zealand, whatever about, focusing on other parts of the game, they're never kind of absolutely destroyed in scrums for the most part. But Lomax and De Groot, I think when they came through, turned them from a team that had a good solid scrum, right, that wouldn't give away too many penalties, to suddenly, a scrum that could be dominant and could win more penalties than they were before. So, even though there was the starting front row struggled against England, this guy is still, a class act as well. And again, he's up against Porter. We know Porter has problems with referees, and if the referee gets the idea, because there's always that thing about Porter, right? The referee's always kind of, I think, thinking about, is he scrummaging straight or not? So if he can get a couple of nudges on him, and we know with front rows as well, you can take a step and make it look like he's driving across when he isn't. And then if the referee thinks that, then, it's happy days for you. So, And I think, Lomax is an intelligent player that would be able to do stuff like that, to manipulate him too. But also, around the park as well, he can give you stuff there. He's not just a scrummager either. He does a set piece well, and he contributes as well in the loose. Then onto the second row, you got Scott Barrett there as the captain. A few less Barretts, or at least one less Barrett in the team this week. Scott Barrett, he had to kind of bide his time in New Zealand because there were so many good locks running about. But the guy is just so solid. He's one of those players who, he's always giving you kind of 7 out of 10 or up. He never really has like a stinker of a game. Never, I'm not saying, well, never is the wrong word to say, but rarely kind of the guy who shines taking the headlines or whatever. But he's the type of player that who he's not in your team, you do miss him, especially the players around him. Then beside him, you got Tupou Vaa'i, who I think went well against England. Then somebody who went really well against England was Wallace Satiti. At least in the opening period of the game, so many good involvements, really good carries, and he has that ability to offload. And not just there's one thing of carrying and offloading. There's another thing of carrying and then offloading to a player who can exploit the space that you've created. And that's what he's able to do. And that is so much better than just offloading to whatever. And maybe, you're flinging up the air and the guy has to catch it behind him or above his head, or it just goes loose and the opposition get it. Satiti, he has that awareness of where the support is, and very sympathetic offloads as well for his support. So he's someone Ireland definitely have to watch out for, because he could definitely, create a try for the likes of Talea or Jordan against Ireland so easily, just by sucking in defenders. He gives that, suddenly there's a mismatch or in terms of numbers, and then your wide men get out there and they're going to kill you. You very rarely get the chance to recover from something like that against the All Blacks when that happens. And then you got Sam Cane there, obviously former captain, another guy kind of like James Ryan, who has improved. His game has improved since that responsibility has been taken away, and he's been able to just focus on his game. We know that when he was captain, he was under so much pressure to, in terms of people saying he's not even the best 7. Why is he the captain? He's only in the team because he's the captain, etc. Whereas now he's definitely there on merit, and his game has just been so much better because he can just focus on that. Then Artie Savea, one of the best players of his generation. I don't think anyone would argue with that. The guy's just a Rolls Royce of a player. He's going to give those hard carries. He's got, he can sell ridiculous offloads, dummies to people. He's got that offloading game as well. He's got the ability to carry for you. He's got the ability to score tries for you. He can be a link player. He can do the hard graft as well. He's just so great to have in your team. He's almost like having 2 players in your team. He's so good. Onto the halfbacks then. Cortez Ratima, obviously one of the new crop coming through. I thought he went well against England, despite throwing that very obvious intercept to Marcus Smith for England's try. Probably learned a lot from that. That you gotta be a bit quicker with your passes. You got to be a bit more circumspect with them as well, and you can't be tempting the opposition to come and to intercept you. You got to look at what else is on. In that position there, maybe the play for him, with England rushing up, would have maybe been to put the grubber in behind, out to that wing, because New Zealand had the numbers, and if one of their players gets the ball, then that was in for a try. But hindsight is 2020. But I thought overall he had a fairly decent game. Then Damon McKenzie at 10, so no Bowden Barrett available. Another big miss for New Zealand. Not saying that McKenzie is a bad player. I think he's a brilliant player. And it's one of these things, kind of similar to Frawley for Ireland, where because he's so versatile, he finds himself on the bench a lot more than he's starting. But when he starts, he can step up and he can produce. I think he's absolutely immensely improved his kicking from the tee as well. That was definitely one of his shortcomings when he was kind of, vying for that starting 10 position. That would have been one of the black marks against him, was that he, very often would have a poor kicking performances from the tee. It wouldn't matter so much because he's so good at running the back line that, he'd make up for it by creating, in 3 or 4 tries or whatever. And then the fact that he missed the conversions, didn't matter because New Zealand were winning by 15-20 points anyway. But then when it came to tight games where he was missing conversions or penalties, it did have an effect. But again, the guy is so good at reading the game. He's got that ability to break himself. So he's got that danger. He's got to be watched. So he keeps the defense guessing. Kicking game, as I said, from the tee's improved. Also kicking from hand, I think, has improved from him as well. So again, Ireland got to be on top of that. But yeah, brilliant player to have in there beside Ratima. Then left wing, you got Caleb Clark. The guy undoubtedly has great talent, but he also has that kind of thing where he can, defense can be a bit suspect, and also he can make silly errors, dropping the ball when he's got the skills to catch it, and to make sure that he's going to score, but sometimes just slightly takes his eye off it, makes an error. But when he's on it, he's got, again, he has that ability to, if he's one-on-one with you, he's probably going to score. Even if he's one-on-two, it's very likely that he's going to score as well. And very dangerous player in attack. He's obviously going to be tested in defence, but so are the Irish wings as well. It's a great matchup, I think, between these wings. And this one, he's gonna, I think, have to win his battle on his wing as well. And if he does that, I think New Zealand, that's one edge they're going to have there as well for them. It's going to be such a tight game that, or at least I feel it's going to be such a tight game that things like that, winning your individual battle could be the key to your team winning. Then into the centres, Jordy Barrett there, guy's just a brilliant player. Again, another guy who's so versatile, and he's just, because he can play like a 10, and has the ability as well. You could even put him on the wing, and has those lovely soft hands, has the awareness of everybody around him. He's such a threat playing at 12 in the centres there. Very good defensively as well. And he's got Ioane there beside him, Rieko Ioane. Really, like a really good match for New Zealand. I talked about it in the build-up to the England game as well, how New Zealand for a long time kind of struggled to find that new partnership in their midfield. They tried so many different players in there, and then they tried Barrett and Ioane together, and suddenly they found something that really worked for them. I think these two really complement each other. Ioane, we know how dangerous he is from starting out as a winger for the All Blacks. He still has that ability to him, but I think he's improved as well since he's gone into the centres in terms of his all-around game. And defensively, those two again, going to be key to their defence there, making sure that the Ireland attack, that multi-phase, multi-option attack, that they're not leaving any gaps for Ireland to exploit. Then Mark Talea, guy's on fire at the minute. If he gets a chance out in the wing, he's almost certainly going to score. You're going to do really well to stop him scoring or stop him offloading for somebody else to score. So, another guy who Ireland have to keep quiet and also put pressure on defensively. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Kicking to someone like him, you want to kick to him and put him under pressure and maybe, get a knock on or contest it and win the ball back. If you make a mess with it and he runs back and he makes a fool of you, then, that's a risk you take. Will Jordan then, brilliant player at fullback. He pretty much, I said it in my review for the game against England. I said, he turns up for the All Blacks, he scores a try. If you're going to bet on anything for that game, I said, bet on Will Jordan to score a try. And what does he do? He scores a try. I think he's going to do the same against Ireland. I think it's so hard for that guy not to score a try for the All Blacks. He's more likely to score a try than not, honestly. And, whether it's going to be a game-winning try, a try that kind of stretches out the lead because the All Blacks are so far ahead, or whether it's turns out to be a consolation try, we don't know. But he's probably going to get a try. Let's be honest, okay? Unless he gets injured very early on, and I don't wish that on anybody. Whether like I'm an Ireland fan, obviously, but I'm not out there thinking, oh great, such and such, Damien McKenzie has had to go off, or Will Jordan has to go off, or Ardy Savea go off early. Oh, that's brilliant. No, for me, I'm an Ireland fan, but above everything, I'm a rugby fan. I want to see the best players playing against each other. That's why these are so special. I don't want to see players getting injured, having to go for HIAs and not coming back, etc., or getting cards, red cards or whatever. So for me, if Ireland win, I want them to win against New Zealand having all of their cards available to them as they have at the moment, in terms of, players are missing, yes, but I don't want extra things happening for either team in terms of injuries during the game. And also, sporting careers, they're so short, and injuries can set people back for so long. It's not really a nice thing to think about, but their impact or their bench, then they got George Bell there at hooker. So guy, who's, again, it's another one of those where you look at it in two ways, right? He's a guy who maybe, you weren't expecting to be on the bench, because you were expecting Taylor to be first choice, and then Aumua to be the backup. So he's in there. He has, two ways to go. Obviously, either a lot of pressure on him, or he just sees it as, this is a huge opportunity for me. I'm going to grab it by the horns, and I'm going to shake things up. So either way that goes. Then Tuinga Fassi, of the three guys that are there on the bench, certainly the most well known up here in the Northern Hemisphere, and the guy with the most experience in terms of the All Blacks. And then you got Tussie there as well. So obviously, Bell wasn't part of that replacement front row against England, but when the replacement did come on, they turned the set piece, especially the scrum, around for New Zealand. So he's coming on with a couple of guys who have that that kind of confidence of the fact that the last time they come on in All Blacks jersey, they had a big impact on the game and helped the team to win the game in a major way as well. So he's going to be part of that unit coming on, and that's going to help him, I think, to settle into the game. Then you got Patrick Tuipulotu. Potentially, his error, I'm pretty sure he's the guy, right, that he caught the restart, and then he went into contact and knocked on, and gave England that scrum that they almost led to basically the drop goal attempt as well, right? So you could say almost lost the game for his team with that error, but certainly somebody that will want to make up for that when he comes on as well. And that's not the only thing he did when he come on against England. I think all of New Zealand's bench, for the most part, had positive impacts as well. Then you got Finau there covering the back row, just going to come on and bring more energy there as well. As the legs are tiring, he's going to come on and probably be, probably around the same time that Peter Romani comes on. So it'd be interesting to see who has the bigger impact off the bench of the two of those. Then you got Cam Rygaard. He's a guy who, when he came on the scene for New Zealand first in the 9 jersey, felt like he was going to be an absolute sensation, that he had the potential to make that 9 jersey his own for many years to come. Hasn't quite worked out that way for him, but he's still a super talented player and somebody that Ireland definitely have to watch. He's one of these where he can, he's got that break in him. He's got that ability to, you switch off for a second, the guy sniped, from maybe 15, 20 meters out, and he's in under your posts, and it's suddenly game over. Then Anton Leonard-Brown, covering a number of positions, probably, we mainly see him at least in the centres, but he can cover wing as well. But another guy who's got vast experience in an All Blacks jersey, and someone who probably feels like he had his chance to be, especially in that midfield, to be a starter for the All Blacks, and he wants to kind of put into kind of Robertson's mind that maybe he's an option there for the future as well. And then you got Pero Feta there at 23, somebody who again is going to come on and have really big impact for his team. He's got the talent, and someone again that Ireland have to keep an eye on off the bench. So I think, obviously New Zealand are calling impact. I think in this case they're probably right. Impact from both teams is going to be so important in this game. Honestly, I can't see it being one-sided to either team in terms of the scoreline. Especially in Ireland, since Ireland got that kind of first win over New Zealand, in Dublin, it's been a lot of tight games between these two teams. I'm expecting another tight game. So let's talk about how I feel that the game itself is going to go. We look at, yes, there are key players missing from both teams, especially in the front row. Definitely kind of have an impact on it. Whichever team can adapt to that better and get kind of a little bit of set piece dominance, definitely going to have an edge. Then we look at it there in terms of the 210s, how they're going to match up as well. Who, two players, vast talent, but also have on occasions been slightly flaky for their teams, whether that's in terms of Mackenzie previously with the All Blacks, or Crowley recently with Munster as well. But two players as well who've shown that it's definitely not nerves that's getting to them. They're men for big occasions, these two, and it's whoever's going to step up to this occasion is going to keep one of the keys again for the winning of the game. That those center matchups as well, both attacking and defense, going to be so crucial to their teams. The back row matchup as well, just mouth-watering. So many talented guys, 6 really talented players, and then coming off the bench as well. Line out, I think, is going to be important as well. Ireland, we've seen before, we love to we kick to the corner, let's see if this happens in the game, right? Ireland kick to the corner, throw in the line out, secured by probably James Ryan, somewhere in the middle of the line out. He's been lifted by his probably one of the props, and whoever is the other lift happens to be the other lifter. He comes down, and then either one or both of the lifters go in behind him and give away a penalty, for obstruction or offside. We do it so often, I won't be surprised if we do it again this one, and it's at a crucial moment of the game where it lifts pressure from the All Blacks. So we'll see if that happens or not in there. But then we got the matchup on the wings is amazing. You could basically the whole team, like the fullbacks. You look again at the second row, you look at the back, like every player on these two teams, you look at them, you think like there's talent all the way through. And that's why I talked about earlier where, people talk about New Zealand being, fading or wherever. You look at those players, you think, how is that fading? Like how many other teams in the world would like to have that amount of talent available to them? So I don't really buy that in terms of this matchup. I think this is going to be a really close game, but I've got to kind of put my money where my mouth is, as it were, and make a prediction. I'm an Irish fan. Ireland at home. Ireland generally have had that edge at home. The one place really where New Zealand definitely still have an edge is neutral ground in our World Cup. They've got that mental thing over Ireland, but Indy Viva or Lansdowne Road, I think Ireland just had that little edge, so I'm going to go for Ireland for probably by a score. Again, I think it's going to be a tight game. Maybe, one score to maybe maximum 10 points. I can't see Ireland blowing New Zealand away. New Zealand have the talent to blow anyone away when they're really on it. But I don't think Ireland are going to, dismantle New Zealand or anything like that. People will probably look at the England game and think that New Zealand, they made so many errors in that game. Doesn't mean they're going to make the same errors against Ireland. Doesn't mean that Ireland are going to be able to capitalise on those errors. England weren't able to do it. Yes, people will say, well, Ireland are a better team than England. But again, rugby doesn't work like that. It's not that, this team almost beat them and we're better than that team, so therefore we should beat them. It's, you go out and it's about momentum during the game, being able to handle the shifts of momentum, for and against you, riding the rough patches, and then when you have your purple patches, scoring your points. So I think both teams are really good at doing that. I think New Zealand have that ability to step up, to the level of the opposition. And I think they'll do that against Ireland as well. I think it's going to be an absolute humdinger. And again, I'm going for an Ireland win. But, I've prattled on for so long. I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, I would ask that maybe you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe even share it with a friend. But let me know what you think down in the comments, how this game is going to go.